Hey, it's Joe West from the West Barn with
Mike Shimshack.
Today, our guest is Dan Malsch from East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. There on the screen. Good dude, good buddy of mine. I've been knowing Dan forever. Before we get started, I want to remind you to subscribe wherever you're listening. Tell a friend, hit notifications, all that stuff. Dan Malsch, when I was in New York City, my wife and I bought a place out in the Delaware Water Gap where we lived, and I would commute into New York City. It was about an hour and a half trip. Dan had an awesome studio out there. He's got an SSL room. You can see behind him there, it looks like a Trident Series 24. Is that a 24?
Oh, that's a 70 series. Okay, it's like a baby 80 series. Same as an 80, but a little smaller.
And he's got an SSL E with G, it looks like there, right?
Yep, EG okay. Plus.
Okay. And he also has a B room and he had a beautiful studio at his house that we had done some work together. We did a Lifer record on Universal together, if I remember correctly.
That's correct.
He did my brother-in-law's death metal band, which was awesome. But Dan and I
also did Doro's record. Remember when you mixed some of Doro track, Doro Pesh?
Yes, yeah.
Germany, yeah.
Yeah, so he's a great engineer. He's a great producer. He's a great songwriter. And I've known him for, I guess, going on 15, 20 years. And I've been calling him, we were talking before we went on the air, I've been calling him Dan Malsch my whole life. And that goes to show you how great musicians are and creatives are. They won't correct you.
No.
Whenever you mispronounce the last name. Sweet human and a super talent. And he had texted and said, hey, man, we should talk about what it's like to build a successful, busy studio. And as he built it for himself, he's an engineer producer. He has other guys working there as well. He has a B room. But he's been able to build this career where he's kicking ass in a secondary market. Or not even a secondary market, right? Because East Stroudsburg is it a secondary? It's like, I think of like Cleveland as a secondary market.
East Stroudsburg is funny because we're only an hour and 15 minutes from Manhattan, so that helps. It's been really successful because it's like a getaway for people. Because it's so close to New York and an hour and 45 from Philly. It hasn't felt like a secondary market, even though it is, or third maybe. East Stroudsburg. Where's East Stroudsburg?
Right.
I never
let's
say
let
East
everybody know.
Stroudsburg.
It's an eastern. You can't really go any further east in northern Pennsylvania before you hit New Jersey.
Exactly. It's the first exit right off the Jersey Delaware Gap, right off 80. First exit is East Stroudsburg.
You have places to sleep at there? Like when people come from New York, can you stay at Really?
Yeah, we could maybe show you that later if you want. But yeah, there's some bedrooms downstairs. There's a full kitchen. There's a lounge. Showers.
Let's make no mistake that the reason why it's successful is because you're great. You're a great producer. You're super hustler. You build everything. Every time you build a place, you're like, I see pictures of you with two by four studded walls. So you are do it yourself. No one else would probably. We can't just act like, oh, you could do this in any secondary markets. It takes a ton of like sort of what you have, which is tenacity. But you're one of the busiest dudes I know. You're always working. And I know you have Bowling for Soup is in there right now, correct?
Yep. We actually just finished a few days ago. Yep. It was great. Awesome guys. And
you also just had Andy Wallace out there mixing, which is like, what?
Yeah, we just mixed a new Gojira record. And Andy's actually coming back. I just got a little cryptic email that we're working on a huge project. I just can't tell us what it is yet.
That's awesome, man. And it's not because you have gear. It's because you've created a place that is like people go there because of you.
Yeah, it's funny. It takes a lot. You have to be a people person, people pleaser. It's a service business. I mean, I do everything. I get coffee for people. I clean up their garbage. I make sure that, they have towels. I just try to be a great host. And then it's natural for me, but it's a lot of work.
And then you mix a record that is like a record that everybody's friends talk about.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like you get them towels, get them coffee, and then you make records that literally, look at your hair. You have no hair. It blows your hair completely off of your head. That's how good your records are.
Thank you.
You're mega talent and it's just, there's not a lot of ego there. It's a lot of like, hey, we're in this together. And we thought that it would be a great podcast because, a lot of times whenever we're doing these podcasts, it's like Grammy Award winner, this guy that, these guys that are like epic names and dudes. We have Tony Platt coming on in a week who was the recording engineer for Back in Black and Highway to Hell and a long list of records. Yeah. So, but let's face it, there's nothing cooler than seeing somebody doing it in a town where they shouldn't be able to do it, secondary market.
For sure.
Killing it, right? And doing premium level stuff. So you are like the epitome. I was telling Mike, you're the epitome of every viewer that we have. It's like this guy who's mega talent, but he's got it just through doing push-ups of audio push-ups, right? And production push-ups.
Absolutely.
So, and if you're doing it, you're a great example of who our audience really is and what they could become. I love that idea.
It's there's a lot to it, obviously. I work on a lot of records. There's not a day in this studio that there's not a mix project going on or a tracking project. And we've hosted a ton of big bands. But we also host a ton of local bands. It's we're not like, oh, hey, Bowling for Soup's here this week, and then we get depressed when it's a local project. We work just as hard for everyone. It doesn't matter who it is. And I've always been, that's probably from the working class Italian family. Everyone's kind of just get up and construction and build. It's about always delivering. Doesn't matter who the client is. Sometimes you get clients that are extremely difficult. And it doesn't matter. I've had this philosophy forever. If it's Andy Wallace working in the studio with me or, a local blues band that I'm working with, it's the same attention to detail. I just actually got two great comments. One was from Andy Wallace. Andy and I hit it off great. We have very similar personalities. Obviously, Andy's a mega mixer, but he has a very working class blue collar mixer. I don't even think Andy knows how good he is or how successful he is. I'm convinced of that. Andy, we'd be sitting down working on something. Andy's asking, hey, what do you think about that? And I'm like, at first, like, what do you say? And then it's finally, after I got more comfortable and we got more comfortable with each other, we would go back and forth and very relaxed. And I'm always very, very, very careful of when to say something and when not to say something. I think that's a huge part of this job. Even if you could say, hey, maybe you could do this a little faster or a little different. It's always knowing when to say something. Yeah. That's a big part of this job, the biggest part. Yeah. You get a lot of younger engineers who are real fast and to do whatever. Hey, you could do this, and then they're giving their opinions constantly. When someone is just kind of working their way around something, getting a rough mix. Hey, you could do this. But Andy's told me, he said, this is one of the best experience I've ever had. And he said, if I'm working on the East Coast and I have any control of it, I'm working with you.
Dude, that's awesome. What a compliment.
It's huge. Yeah, and we talk on the phone. He calls me. He's like, and I'm always a little afraid to call him back. He's like, no, Dan, don't. You can call and talk to me about the weather if you want. I like it. And then the guys in Bowling for Soup just told me this is huge for me because I'm a slave to the studio. I kind of lost money on the Andy Wallace gig because I had to do so much to the SSL before he got here. I wanted to make sure it was perfect. Everything was perfect. I had a tech in for 2 weeks and everything is pretty much perfect. But the guys from Bowling for Soup said to me, this is one of the best experiences we've ever had. Said most of the studios record in this 2 or 3 hours a day of downtime trying to get this thing to work or this piece of gear to work. Everything in my studio works. Wow. I make sure I'm up before everyone, frantically making sure there's not a little crackle on this piece of gear. And I have a lot of gear. And I have a great studio manager, great engineers here. But, when the gears, I'm in Pennsylvania, in the Poconos, when something breaks, pretty much I have to fix it.
Here's a question for you, Dan. So like when Andy Wallace comes in, right, and you
nervous,
you guys are in an area that maybe pro audio gear is not like you can't just run down to Blackbird audio rental and get whatever compressor you want.
No,
does he give you a list ahead of time of what he's looking. I know he uses mainly, but you know, you have to go get different monitors for him. Do you have to?
Well, yeah. So Andy still using the 1031s, the bigger ones. Yeah, the 1031s. I actually couldn't find them for him, so he actually brought his own. But his gear, he uses a console. He does use an SPX 990 or an SPX 90. We couldn't find one, so what we did is adapted some plugins to take. So, for instance, he would use a 480L. Instead, we used the 480L Universal Audio. He was fine with it. He was really fine with everything. I did have a backup because sometimes he doesn't like the bus console on the SSL. So I did have a hardware unit in case he didn't like the console, but he ended up using the console.
The bus compressor. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. He ended up using it on Stun. It's crazy. He's an amazing person to work with.
Did you ever reach over and smack his hand when he was doing anything? Like, hey, you can't set that compressor to Stun.
Yeah, you can't do that. There's an 8 dB compression.
Andy, you asked me for my opinion. I'm going to give it to you now, non-stop for the next week.
No.
That's a real art form, man, to know, like when a legend, someone who you look up to asks you, okay, what do you think of this? It's like, man, you want to make sure you're not that guy that you complain about people doing that to you. So you try to tread real lightly, make sure that you're respectful.
I was so nervous before he came in, and I'm kind of an anxious guy to begin with. I always want to make sure everything is right and everything works out. But he is the nicest, most gracious, humble person I've ever worked with. He would ask to get me coffee more than I'd ask him. He's like, "You want some coffee? Can I get it for you?" It's like, well, and how a couple of things with Andy real quick, and I know I'm blowing up about Andy, but one of the things I've learned from Andy, because we all pretty much do the same stuff. I mean, there aren't any real tricks. But what Andy is great at, he's an amazing listener. There's no phone. There's no distractions. He can listen for hours at a time without sometimes even looking up or getting, going over to his phone. Like he'll check his phone maybe 2 or 3 times a day. And he will listen and listen and listen. And his attention to detail is amazing. It's something to see. All of kind of us younger, I'm not young anymore. A lot of times we're looking at our phone, checking texts, answering messages. Now, Andy has a great team of managers, so he doesn't really have to do that. But his attention to detail it's crazy. One little Andy story. We were going back and forth. So how we set up the session was we would have a Universal Audio channel strip on every channel. So we're kind of mimicking the console. So say kick drum, we have the E channel strip on the console and E channel strip in Universal Audio. So if we couldn't get something out of the console, just say the high end was a little funky on a channel, we would immediately switch over to the channel strip. So, and I would be working Pro Tools for Andy. So sometimes we'd be doing little rides, 0.2 dB, 0.3 dB, little tiny rides. And I was going back and forth. And Andy, I think he said to me like 0.3 or something. And I changed it to 0.2 or 0.1 or something. And he's like, looks at me, is that 0.3? And I was like, oh no, it's actually 0.2. So I don't know, maybe he just guessed, but it was one of those things where I was, whoa. Yeah.
Did he use the automation of the console or in Pro Tools?
Console.
Mm-hmm.
Completely, 100% on the console. We would do little tiny fader rides if it was something that was very minute and we couldn't really get it fast enough on the console. But all his main rides are all on the console.
Oh, wow.
He's 100% on the console.
And how long a day? Was it a song a day? Was it multiple songs a day?
A song a day and then revisions the next day.
Okay.
So like a day and a half a song.
So can you pick up your phone and show us around your control room? Because I'm sure you're in the box, but man, you've got a lot of gear.
I am actually a lot on the console, but I use my console pretty much now as a summing mixer. But I am still using a lot of EQ on the console, and I'm trying to think of
what is that, 56 frame?
Can you see the?
Yeah.
Is that a good look?
Yeah.
It's a 56 frame, but I don't have the stereo channels in it right now.
So you're loaded. What is that?
40.
Okay.
40.
Loaded 40. You got the patch band on the left, and what are those? Those are those Westlakes that I love, the BM12s.
They're great.
Those are maybe my favorite speakers ever.
They're great. I've like all of us, like, oh, maybe I'll get some new. Is that a good shot for you?
Yeah, it's a great shot.
I'll get some new monitors, some $50,000, which, Asperger's or something. But every time someone comes in and listens to the Westlakes, they say these sound amazing.
Yeah. And show us your racks and your Trident.
Okay, so Trident is here. Let's see if that's a good shot for you.
Yeah.
That work?
Uh-huh.
So that's some of the gear. I have I don't know if you can see it. I have a Fairchild recreation behind me from Anthony DeMaria. That is on every mix I have. I have a lot of gear. I have some Pultecs back there.
Yeah, I see them. Are those real Pultecs?
Yep, real Pultecs. I have some BAE stuff in that rack.
What are you using the Trident for primarily versus the S?
Sometimes tracking drums. If it's kind of like a grittier rock band, I will track on the Trident.
Trident, yeah.
So I kind of go through. I track drums on the Trident. I track drums on. I have a rack of Neve 1081s. You can see them behind me.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
This is actually the big rack, and I wish I can
move out of the way a little bit. So we love you.
Maybe John can hold it. John, you want to hold this? He'll get a better shot, so you guys could get.
Remember, you're tethered, I think, with your headphones. So no.
Yeah. You think I'd be more prepared, but that's
okay. So the gear we're looking at here, you see, you've got.
Yeah, John's going to give you a little gear shot of everything.
There we go. Some 1176s, distressors, LA2As.
Yeah, those LA2As.
100.
Yep, those LA2As are Yep, those LA2As are the real deal. One's from 1960. I have them marked in the back. One's like 63 and one's like 67. I have a rack of 1081s over on the side.
Wow.
Real 1081s. I have a rack of Wonders. How do I like the what?
Wonder stuff.
I like the Wonders better than the 1081s.
Yeah. Are the Wonders Jeff Tanner's stuff? Is that where that stuff comes?
No, it's Mike is his first name. I'm going to blank. I apologize. Mike.
In Austin, Texas, I think.
Yes, he is in Texas. So the Wonders, not to get all geeky and technical, they have that kind of warmth like the 1081s, but they have more of a punch like an API. They're a little cleaner and a little faster. Because sometimes the 1081s, for a lot of the music that I do, sometimes a little too squishy. But we actually just tracked the Bowling for Soup drums on the SSL. And it's one of the best drum sounds we've gotten in a long time. Everyone's like, oh, you can't track on the SSL. It's so punchy with the compressors. And then some DW Fern stuff, which I like a lot.
Is that the red stuff?
Yep. I have the compressor, the VT7, and I have the VT2 mic pre's. If you go over to that other rack too, so you can kind of see the Pultecs, and I also have an LA3A, which I got recently. Which I love. I use that a lot.
Yeah, those are incredible
for guitar. Yeah, I use them on vocals a lot too.
I was a late comer to the LA3A, but once I got there, I recognized why I was wrong for hating on it for so long. You see, you got a Brent Averill up there.
I have that's the original. It still has with the Neve parts in it.
Can you go back to the API rack there? I see you got a bunch of 312s or 512s down there.
512s. I actually like the 312s that you have better. I have a couple 312s, Brent Averill ones, but I like the 312s better than the 512s. I have the 512s.
I have a question for you about that.
Yeah.
I talked to the guys at API, and they told me that there is absolutely no difference between any of their mic pre's except for the 212s. And I might be wrong, but the message I got from the guy, the tech guy, he said every single mic pre made around that 2520 op amp, which is every API mic pre. The only difference is that the legacy consoles that had the 212s in them, that those have different transformers because of their size factor. But he told me that there is nothing other than the mounting. A 512 is a 312. I don't know. Do you know that?
It doesn't sound that way to me. I always describe the 512s as more plastic sounding. I don't really know what that means, but the 312s sound more rich to me. I always use my 312s.
Yeah.
I don't love the 512s.
Huh.
But I love the 312s.
Maybe somebody can tell us if we're crazy or if they know anything more down in the comments. I see you have a 33609. It looked like an early one, like either an A, a B, or a non-letter.
It's actually, I'm going to tell you what it is. It's a 34628B. 34628B. So what I'm told with this one sat on the top of the Neve console in a rack, and it's shorter than the 33609. So it's not
a 19-inch.
No, it's shorter.
What's it supposed to be? Like a 32264 circuit?
I think it's supposed to be a 33609, but because of how it's sat in the console, I'm sorry, it is a 19-inch rack, but it's not as deep. It's much more shallow.
All right, here's someone can correct me if I'm wrong on this. So 33609, famous compressor by Neve. There was originally the 33609 with no letter. Then there was an A, then there was a B, then there was a C, then there was a D, and then later became a J. I don't know anything about the J. It was for Japan, as I was told. But the no revision, so the straight 33609 and the A and the B are both derivative of the 32264s, the famous drum compressor that used to sit in the 58s, 68s. I think it was 50 and 68s. They look like 1073s. I don't know that they'd fit in that slot, but they fit like in that rail over in the master section. And legendary compressors. I have a set of them, and they're $12,000 for a pair of them. But it's
crazy.
They do something nothing else does. They're magic. And the limiters in them are insane. Like you put the limiter in, and it's insane. So from what I was told from Jeff Tanner is that the 33609 with no letter and the A and the B are essentially the same circuit as the 2264, which became the 32264, those two that were in the console. These are the rack mount versions. And I heard that the 33609C and D are based off of a 2254. Totally different compressor.
Yeah.
So interesting to know. But those compressors for me, man.
Oh, they're amazing.
I remember like listening to Tom Lord-Alge drum sounds, like, and thinking like, how do you get that sound? How do you get that sound? How do you get that sound? And from what I heard, a lot of it was the 2250 or the 2264 or the 32264, which is the same. One has Marconi knobs, the blue knobs. One had metal knobs. Right. So same compressor, just different outfits on the finish. Right. So I had been searching for years for 264s, but I'm a cheapskate. It hurts my soul.
Expensive.
It obviously doesn't hurt your soul because I look around that control room and I'm like, this.
Oh no,
this
it
dude
hurts my soul. It hurts my soul.
I look at that gear and I'm like, that's everything that I want, but I have not bought.
Well, listen, I have two kids, both in college now, 1 year apart.
All your gear is going to start to diminish.
Both in private college. So if you see 2 years down the road,
you're going to be
like one distressor. One distressor.
You have a Mackie 8 bus in the front and a couple of like RNC compressors in the back, or at least it's 3630s in the back.
That could happen.
I eventually found that compressor for sale for $4,000 in a rack mount, a nice, power supply. And And it's not like you ever have a budget set aside for $4,000 for compressors.
No
so like I had to like go find
who
the
has
money.
that? Yeah, who has that?
So
we're in the music business.
I begged the guy to keep it and hold on to it. He was nice enough to do it for like the weekend. I raised the money and I went back and I bought it. In fact, I paid like $4,500. I only could get $4,000. And I gave him the $4,000 and he let me take them. And then I got him the $500 because it was just like, I've wanted those compressors my whole life.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's, you know, it's hard to justify buying these things these days because, you know, stuff in the box is great. Universal Audio stuff. I mean, if you did a blind LA2A Universal Audio plugin compared to the hardware unit, I would probably be wrong half the time. That particular compressor, because I've done it, they did a great job.
Yeah.
It's hard to justify buying this really expensive analog gear, especially this much. I've just had it for, you know, so many years and I love it. So real quick, are you familiar with Anthony DeMaria's gear at all?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're kind of friends. We talk, you know, not so much anymore, but we've talked quite a bit. And he said, I really want you to have one of my 670s. Now the 670 is $19,000. It's a Fairchild recreation. What's that?
So I bet he did want you to have one.
Yes, but so this is crazy. This is kind of my luck. I said, Anthony, I can't afford a $19,000 compressor. He's like, no. I'm going to bring it to you. You could try it. You know, everyone wants you to try it, so you love it. Right. But even so, he brought it to me, and I love it. It's great. But is any compressor worth $19,000? I mean, it's worth it, the time he had to put into it, and it's a piece of art. But can you tell the difference between a $5,000
Yeah, can you make the money back off of it?
I don't know. No, definitely not. But he gave me such an amazing deal. I can't say what that deal is, but
$18,999.
No, I'd have to tell you off the air. It was worth me getting.
Well, to put that into perspective, my parents spent $15,000 on their house in 1969, the year I was born.
Yeah.
And they still live in that house. So you think about, like, you can't live in that 670.
It's almost embarrassing, though, sometimes when you say to someone you bought a $19,000 compressor, they look at you kind of like, what's lacking? And, are you a terrible mixer?
His kids don't have shoes.
Do you have, your kids, I saw they can't go to college. They have no clothes,
So before we I want to talk to you, I want to get on to like your approach and how you've built this business in a secondary market. But can you grab the phone and show us your live room? Now,
sure.
You kind of built this whole space, and I don't know, your B room is upstairs, but is it just like, do you have a console up there? Is it all in the box?
No, we have a console up. In the B room, we also have, we have a lot of gear in the B room. we have.
Your wife right now is literally logging on to.
I have to say, she doesn't. Luckily, I'm busy enough to where I'm not stupid. I think that's one thing why I've been successful and why I'm still open. I've really planned things out, and I don't buy it unless I have the money. I really don't. I'm not, and that's probably why I work 30 hours a day. Is that's why I lost my hair. I have a cold every other day.
Well, show us your live room.
All right, let me flip this guy around.
Yeah, sort of zoom around. Just go around the whole control room real quick so we can get the lay of the land.
Okay, we'll see if this is good for you. So here's the SSL.
Yeah.
And you see my Quested speakers, which I've been using forever.
Mm-hmm.
When I mix, I don't switch off the Questeds at all. I'm not a type of guy that goes from NS10s.
Mm-hmm.
I only stay on one pair of speakers. I've been doing that forever. I have the NS10s there, just if other people want to use them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's this is a large control room. It's probably about 32 feet deep.
Oh wow!
But it's it's got angled walls and very deep bass traps in the front and back. Here's a shot of the Trident. There's a back of the room. There's John, studio manager, engineer, making sure I don't mess anything up.
Look how deep those walls are out to the windows. It shows you how much
check it
build
out.
out there is.
Yeah, if you can see how it's probably about 18 inches, maybe close to, maybe a little more. But if you see how deep this one is,
yeah,
a lot of bass trapping back there. And the ceilings are high in here too. But yeah, so if I walk this, is that enough for the controller?
Yeah, great. Right.
So if I walk out, this is kind of my sound lock entrance, but this is going into the live room now. So I have actually 3 doors going into the live room. This live room is almost 40 feet long.
Oh, wow. Dude.
So the ceilings are about 14 feet, but they are angled because this was a ranch. And we knocked out the ceilings completely. And there's a huge fireplace in here that kind of helped us with, can you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that kind of helped us with supporting the ceiling because it's all open. So yeah, that's kind of a shot of the live room. And I built this all by myself. I had some, guys helping me with the labor part of it, but all the design.
So no ISO booths, or where?
Yeah, I do have 2 ISO booths.
Gotcha.
So if we walk around the back of the fireplace,
of course you have a grand piano.
Yeah, Steinway.
Man,
I wish I knew how to play, but I don't. So yeah, this is one of the kind of vocal booths, guitar lands. A lot of guitars here, and I pretty much.
Big.
It's a big ISO booth.
Yeah, great line of sight there.
Yeah, I made it so we're looking right into the control room. Some diffusers, some absorption, all angles. Let me get this shot. And let me know if I'm moving too fast.
No, you're doing good.
So this is the back of the ISO room, and there's another ISO room right behind it.
Oh yeah,
as a sight line too, going from. But also, I have this Manley reference.
Mm-hmm.
That's always set up, and I have this Flea 47 that's always set up. They kind of work almost always. If the Manley's too bright, we go to the Flea. So everything in the studio is pretty much set up and ready to go. Even the drums. We actually just tore down the Bowling for Soup kit, so we just kind of threw our kit back up.
Mm-hmm.
But we have a lot of kits in this room. But this is a Tamistar Classic that we have set up.
Awesome.
If you want to see,
you don't have to take us up to the B room. I mean, I know it's up a flight of stairs, but you can just tell us. You've got a bunch of outboard gear. And what's the console up there?
It's a Toft. What is it?
ATB 32.
Yeah, it's an ATB 32.
Wow.
It's got nice EQs. We can't really mix in that console because the 2 bus is a little suspect.
Gotcha.
But it's a good tracking console.
And
you want to see the kitchen at all, or are you good?
Yeah, if you think it's something.
I'll
cool.
just walk down there real quick. So you're walking down the steps from the live room, and this is the B. This is the B entrance area. So if you went up this way, you would go to Studio B.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is the kitchen. Through the kitchen. And it's a full kitchen.
It's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah. And then if you walk down this, which I won't take it, it's boring. That's the sleeping quarters and the lounge. And
so tell us, I don't know how private it is, in regards to what you want to disclose. What's it? Do you have this do you have just regular rates for the room? Like, what's it cost to come there and make a record with you by the hour, or is it? How do you do that?
Okay, so I'm going to switch this around. So Studio A is $800 a day, including an engineer. So sometimes how we work it out, if I'm doing the project, it's a little more, just because I get a certain percentage if I'm producing or mixing. But the studio itself is $800 a day. and Studio B is $450 or $500 a day. I don't really know about what they charge. John does most of the booking in Studio B. Yeah. I think it's either so it's fairly inexpensive. And we do long days, probably a lot longer than we should.
So let's say somebody books it for a day, 800. What is a day? Is it 10 hours? Is it 12 hours? Is it 16 hours? It
seems like sometimes it's 12, 14 hours. We definitely don't shut people down at 10. We're pretty loose with the time. I mean, if it gets out of control, we do, but we'll go to 12, sometimes even 14 hours. If the project's, so my philosophy, if the project's moving and we're doing really well, and you say we're doing vocal tracks and the singer feels good, I would never shut them down, because maybe the next day they don't feel good.
Yeah.
So, but if it's something where I'm, just tracking guitars and, we're not really moving too well, then I will shut it down.
I always found
I've gotten better at that.
When you were on a longer record where you were like in with someone for 10 days, if you were tracking, if you did do a 16-hour day, you always started at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon the next day. So
for sure.
It was
all the time.
It wasn't like they were getting some great deal. And as long as you're getting good stuff, you stay in. But it always sort of worked itself out, because people are just not willing to spend a 16-hour day after 16-hour day. They could do it maybe for one day, but they won't do it forever.
They can't do it, except for this artist, Eric Steckel. Are you familiar with Eric at all? I'm not going to go off on a tangent, but he's an amazing blues guitar player. Amazing. He's been doing it professionally since he's 12. I've done 5 or 6 records with him. We do his whole record, most of them, in about 5 or 6 days, tracked, mixed, mastered, out the door. It's the most intense records I've ever been involved in. Now, he's amazing. I mean, I can't tell you. I could count the times on my hand that he's actually messed up in sessions. It's crazy. Even if he hits a note that's a little suspect, it's never bad. But his records are marathon, because there's not really a budget. So
is your work coming just purely from word of mouth? Is that where your work comes from? So it's not like you advertise. It's not like you're doing anything. It's just that you keep doing. You do great work, and the reward for good work is more work.
People say to me sometimes, how's this Corona thing? Is it affecting you in the pandemic? And I sometimes I have to kind of play it down, but I'm busier than ever. It's, I guess a lot of people at home now recording, so now they need me to mix a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But I actually am at the point now where I'm turning down a lot of projects. Mm-hmm. And it's mostly personal because, Joe, if you've worked with someone for 20 years and they still want to work with you 20 years later, that's oh, sorry about that. Sorry.
We got you.
That's sometimes hard, because you have to pick and choose what you're going to work on.
Yeah.
And people work with you. You never want to be like, oh, I can't do that project, but you have to pick. And sometimes if they're used to working with you, you could say, oh, you could work with one of the other engineers. That's tough, because people take that personally.
Yeah.
And it's never personal. It's just, you can only, so we are in the position that we actually turn down work, which is.
Here's the cool thing. Here's the message that I hope people get, is that there's a whole other life. So there's a version, and I tell my guys at the school this, there's a version where you stay in Nashville and you try to work on records that are banging out number ones. Eventually you get to a point, if you are King of the Hill, where you are Dan Huff, or Jay Joyce, so you're making these records that you're just like the it guy on the biggest records in the world, right?
Yeah.
But there's also a version where you go to a secondary market, set up an incredible high level of work, and you make maybe not as much money as those guys, but you make 10 times more than everyone else, the other 99% that are struggling to be the 1% in the major market.
Sure. There's
a version where the secondary market is big fish, smaller pond. And I don't mean to put you in this because your work is so good.
Fine.
It's your work is like totally like as good
I know
as
where
it gets. No, I mean, purely from a geography standpoint, I'm saying there is a real brilliance in giving somebody a service that they don't deserve in that market. The market won't bear it, right?
Yeah.
But you did it anyhow, and now it's like you're the only place to get a world-class record in Eastern Pennsylvania.
I have to say, and I don't know how to say this without sounding I don't know how to say this without sounding a little bit, but financially, I'm quite certain that I'm probably doing better than most who you'd consider, might be the A-list guys.
Yeah.
And so I tell my students that all the time. It's just about doing the work. I was never the guy who went out and searched for, I got to work on a Metallica record. I just got up and did work every day. Mm-hmm. I got up, whatever the session was, whoever was booked, I would treat it like a Metallica record. Right. So now 20 years later, I'm paying for 2 kids in private college. No problem. It sounds a little, I don't know, maybe egotistical. It's terrible.
It doesn't. It doesn't.
I don't think like that at all.
Amazing story.
That's your nature to think that it does, but the reality is, like, you own multiple pieces of real estate in East Stroudsburg.
Yep.
You own let me put your studio into context for people that don't know. In the heyday of recording studios, when I was working at every big room in New York City, I'd walk into a room and they'd all have SSLs, let's say. Mm-hmm. The outboard racks look like this: 2 SPX 90s, maybe a couple of LXP1, Lexicon PCM 42, a couple of delays, maybe a LA2A. Like, that was maybe a couple other pieces of gear. To get a room that has this gear that you have in it, you couldn't get it because it just didn't make sense. Like, Hit Factory would spread that gear across 4 rooms.
Right.
So people are able to go get a room that has an SSL, that has the Trident, plus all the gear, plus a level of expertise, and a guy who knows, like, has a philosophy. He built the room around the way he hears music. Whereas you would go into New York City, and that room would be a $2,000 room.
Oh, for sure.
$2,000 a day without that much outboard gear. So people don't realize the value that has come, and above all that is worthless unless they have you behind the console, or somebody that connects with them as an artist and is really proficient as a really talented engineer, producer, whatever their role they're filling. All that gear is meaningless, but you do have the gear. Absolutely. And then you have the level of, like, artistry that you bring to it. I mean, that's a value. I'm not surprised, but I think it's a model that you could franchise, not you specifically, but
I've been asked that a lot.
people out in let's pick a market like, Bozeman, Montana. People in Little Rock, Arkansas. These people in Harrisburg. People in Erie, Pennsylvania. In Saratoga, New York. These kinds of, like, we don't really have buildings, like city buildings, but we're on a map as a little city. You could go into these markets and you could do. It takes a lot of work, right? It's a lot of sweat equity. You built that with your hands.
For sure.
But you could build a business. Anyone watching this, if they loved it that much, they could build a business that is probably a multiple 6-figure business.
For sure.
And
easy.
You're a guy now that's turning down work.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's what I love about your story. And what I'd love to get across to people is, like, sometimes success doesn't look like the people on the covers of the magazines. Sometimes you are probably more financially solvent than 95% of the legendary guys that we may interview or that you have seen pop up on a timeline across your history of watching engineers and being fans of engineers. And your talent, not to say anything, your talent is not 1 decimal point, not 1/10 of a dB, to use your analogy with
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So you're not any less talented than any of the guys that are maybe the highest profile in the biggest cities that get all the attention, but you're financially killing it. You're creatively killing it, and you've built a facility. This can be done all over the country. I think that's
I
cool.
agree. I agree.
Where does most of the work come from? Are you getting a lot of New York City? Are you getting DC people, or where are you getting people from?
Well, geez, Bowling for Soup came from Texas.
Yeah.
Eric Steckel lives in California, and he comes here. I think a testament to what we do is, like, just say Eric Steckel, for instance. I've done 5 of his records. Keep some. Michael Graves, the second singer from the Misfits. I've done 8 of his records.
Wow.
It's work that keeps coming.
They don't live in the area.
No. I don't think I personally don't do much work from the area. Some of the other engineers in Studio B do a lot of work from the area. I do a handful of work from the area, but my work pretty much comes from a client I'm starting tomorrow. They're from kind of Philadelphia area, but I do I probably do 10% from the area and other 90% from everywhere else, because it's a getaway. The studio is, you can come and spend, under $1,000 a day and have a place to stay, every piece of gear you want, attention to detail. So yeah, we get a lot of
$30 a day. Does that include accommodations too for sleeping?
Yes.
Oh, geez.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it includes.
You're saving hundreds of dollars in hotel bills.
Right.
For sure.
That would be more than a cartage. $800 a day, if you had a big session in Nashville, you would approach that on just cartage of getting 6 to 8 guys into play and all their drums and keyboards and pedal steels. You would probably pay that in cartage, or real close to that in cartage.
I can't figure out how do bands afford that. I don't. I mean, how does that make sense? They can't.
It doesn't make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
If you have cartages, I'd hate to be in the cartage business right now, because
Right.
it's the first thing that's like, hey, can you just bring your drums, another
Right.
kit, or we got a house kit or whatnot. But, cartage on drum kits are $150 to $175, a session just for the cartage.
Yeah, that's half our budget sometimes for a day. But I think that's the whole. I think also my philosophy and kind of the studio philosophy is, we treat. I've said this before, but whether it's a $500 mix, which I do all the time, or it's a $2,000 mix, they're getting the same mix.
Right.
But it allows me sometimes, if it's a bigger project, like a Gojira project or something, that allows me to be able to charge people that, $500 a mix sometimes. And I'll spend a whole day on it.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of, not really making money on it, but I'll keep doing their records over and over and over again. It's tough. It's tough on me mentally. And, but I ride a bike. I take care of myself. I have to, but I tell people, because I have students too. I have a little academy. If you get up and do the work every day, and pretty much in the beginning, don't say no to anything. Now I can say no to certain things, and just do the work. Do it. Every single project you work on, whether you're getting paid $200 or $1,000, approach it exactly the same way. And follow through is a big thing. I'm also the guy that helps bands out after they're done with the record. Whether it's, they have a million questions about distribution, playlisting. My follow through it goes way beyond the record.
It absolutely builds loyalty. If you think that somebody cares about what you're doing and is helping you, sure, the music business is littered with people screwing other people over, but
sure,
if you look at it fractionally, there's people were dedicated to working with you because they know the outcome's going to be great. That you care, that you show up, and if it's for $200 that day, it's not like you're going to get 80% of the work for the workability of you. They know that you're in it for the right reasons. Yeah, what I love about the story is that I think that it could be anybody who has the drive to do what you do.
For sure.
They may not have your talent, and talent grows. And I think you're a different engineer and producer and songwriter than you were 25 years ago, as we all were. But, the goal is that you can do this, that this is there's not just one version of success. And this is the genius dude way of, like, when you look back and you say, oh, that dude, people 100 years from now look back and they say, like, who the hell is Metallica? So who cares who worked with Metallica sometimes? But it's like you look at your career 100 years from now and you look at somebody else's and you say, that guy had it right. It's a cool thing, man.
I hope so. I'm trying.
Well, can you tell us, like, okay, and this is actually a great commercial. You should put this whole episode up as an advertisement. And it, like, unintentionally, we have sort of revealed, we pulled the layers of the onion back to reveal where your true intentions are. And it's like, who wouldn't want to work with a guy like you? Who wouldn't want to make, I want to make a record with a guy like you, and I don't even have a band. So, like, tell us how people.
You're that guy too, Joe. So.
Well, thank you. Tell us how people can find you and get a hold of you to whatever, to mentor, to go to your school, to record a record.
Sure. My site is danmalschmusic.com. It has the Academy on it. It has my production page. It also has the studio gear. We have a Facebook page. It's Dan Malsch Music. We also have an Instagram, which is Dan Malsch Music. We're pretty active on Facebook. Instagram also, but for some reason we get a lot more reaction out of Facebook.
Okay.
But yeah, and also I communicate a lot with people. I'll communicate months before they even record, listening to their demos, giving them ideas on what they should do, how to get ready for the studio. Sometimes they end up, not being able to afford coming to the studio, but I still go back and forth on demos and get people ready to come to the studio. So,
I can say one of the most revealing testaments to a person's just who they are is when they come and work in your studio. And last week or the week before, you came down and did a record at my place.
You have an amazing studio, Joe.
Thank you. And I can't tell you how easy it was. I kept on, like, you were so busy doing so many other records that whenever I was like, hey man, let's jump on the phone, because I wanted to see, like, do you have a plot? I wanted to get my Ron Petroff was your assistant on that record, and I was just like, well, he's too busy, he can't get back to it. And some guys will then come in and be a total pain in the ass, about like, hey, I need a SM57/2 that's only made during this batch, and why don't you have it? Easy going, great sound, session went flawlessly. And it's a testament to the kind of person you are, coming into another person's room after you obviously have a certain level of expectation being in your own room. So you're a good dude. People would be wise.
Your studio is amazing, I have to say. I mean, we had an amazing time there.
We had a great time having you.
Everyone said how much they love it, and it's so easy to work with you. And your what's your assistant's name again?
Ron Petroff.
I'm terrible with names, so he's a great guy, great assistant.
Yeah.
Your room's amazing, so I would come back there. I any excuse to get away.
You could be my Andy Wallace. If you're ever working in the Southern Central Time area, that I will be your go-to studio. So, thank you, buddy, for coming on. We'll put all those links down here down in the description. So if you want to connect with Dan, and remember, this could be you. All you got to do is find a place and carve a piece out for yourself. So, all right, buddy.
I appreciate it, Joe. Thanks for taking the time.
Had a blast hanging with you. All right, y'all.
I'll see you soon. I'll be back up there soon.
We're signing off for the West Barn. See you next time.